wrestling fans, this is Sal LaSardo reporting in from Orlando, Florida with another edition of Rough Cuts. We're going to talk about this is a tribute topic this week and the tribute topic this week is on the first person you see when you walk into a live wrestling event and the last person you see at a live wrestling event. A little difficult on television, but when you're watching at home. But when you go to a wrestling event, who was the first person you see and who was the last person you see? Before I get to that, please be advised these are my opinions only. They're not affiliated with Bill Apter or any wrestling promotion. Alright, let's get to it. This is a tribute edition of Rough Cuts. And the question I just posed was, who was the first person you see at a live event and also at the close of an event? And that is the ring announcer. The ring announcer. So this edition of Rough Cuts is going to be a special dedication and tribute to some of the finest ring announcers ever, anywhere in the world of sports entertainment. So that's going to be the topic. And I'm going to start off with one of my favorites who made my childhood very special and truly a remarkable individual. He should be in the WDB Hall of Fame. He really should. He should be in quite a number of Hall of Fames. And I hope he gets the call because he truly deserves it. And yes, he's very much alive and well. I've actually spoken to him on Twitter. His name, Gary Michael Cappetta. Yes, Gary Michael Cappetta, a fixture of the WWE days from 1974 to 1985. He was a part of the NWA WCW days up until May of 1995 when he was released due to budgetary cuts. He was dubbed the world's most dangerous announcer by his longtime dear friend, Jim Cornette. And the reason being that Gary Michael Cappetta was dubbed this is because every time Gary Michael Cappetta got on the mic and was part of a wrestling show, something was going to happen at an event. Something was going to happen. History was going to be made. He was one of those ring announcers that when you went to see him in the arena, you just knew something was going to happen. Something magical was going to happen. And that's why he was the most dangerous ring announcer, because danger lurked on the card, and yet you made lasting memories. And he was just absolutely amazing to hear him on the microphone. Not only was he a ring announcer, he was an author, a voiceover artist, a screenwriter, a stage performer, and also a teacher. He had many, many trades. But for us, the fans, we will know him for being the most incredible, gifted, talented voice of professional wrestling. I often say that when WCW let Gary Michael Cappetta go, that was the beginning of the end. Yet Michael Buffer was there, and yes, he was another no slouch in his own right, a tremendous boxing ring announcer that brought his catchphrase, "Let's get ready to rumble," over to the WCW days. But I take Gary Michael Cappetta any day of the week, hands down. Gary Michael Cappetta was a long-term fixture in professional wrestling. Michael Buffer was more like the celebrity that came in, but as soon as Gary was done with WCW in May of 1995, you kind of saw the beginning of the end of the writing on the wall. That's my opinion, and a very, very incredibly gifted, special ring announcer that should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. He's given a long, long, lustrous career to the world of professional wrestling. Another name, how about the first female wrestling ring announcer, full-time? Lilian Annette Garcia. Yes, she was involved with the WWE days from 1999 to 2008, nearly 10 years. She became the first 10-year ring announcer. She also was a part of the ring announcing duties from 2011 to 2016. So 1999 to 2008, and then 2011 to 2016, she became a ring announcer. And then she also had some storylines involved with the WWE as well. But what made Lilian Garcia so special is that before every wrestling event, and even went for the folks at home and during the pay-per-views, she'd always sing "America the Beautiful," the Star Spangled Banner. Yes, she is a very accomplished singer away from professional wrestling. Very accomplished singer. And her voice carried and got the crowd so enthusiastic and excited of her beautiful renditions of the Star Spangled Banner, "America the Beautiful," anytime that she would sing inside that squared circle. And no doubt, I'm sure in between like commercials and things, the fans, she may have actually done that. I never saw her in person, but again, ring announcers' jobs also is to entertain in between commercial breaks as well, and a lot of them do. And I would not doubt if Lillian got up in the ring and bolted out a few bars. But still, credible, gifted voice that definitely was moving and riveted. Yes, Lilian Garcia, no doubt she will be in the Hall of Fame. No doubt. Her time is coming for the Hall of Fame very soon. First full-time ring announcer, Lilian Garcia. A current actually ring announcer, Justin Roberts. Justin Roberts. Yes, he is a part of All Elite Wrestling, but he was a part of World Wrestling Entertainment from 2002 to 2014, and then they decided not to renew his contract at the end of 2014, which is October 13, 2014. They did not renew his contract. He went on the indie scene for about 5 years, for 2014 to 2019, and then he joined All Elite as their full-time ring announcer. What makes Justin Roberts so unique too is he also, and I've been told this many times, is that he entertains the audience in between. What we were just talking about with Lillian, Justin Roberts has been known to entertain the audience as well, in between the breaks, on the commercial breaks, and when there's nothing going on and the combatants in the ring. Justin Roberts would come out and was ringside, and he would entertain the audience. He was known for entertaining the audience. A lot of people have told me that. And so good after so many years with the WWE, and then on the indie scene, now he's back on the national stage doing what he does best. Oh, Justin Roberts, another fabulous ring announcer. Go back a little bit back to the day way before I was born. Mr. Johnnie Addie. Mr. Johnnie Addie. He was hired by Madison Square Garden in 1948. He followed the tradition of Harry Barlow and Joe Humphreys. He done more than 1,000 boxing matches at Madison Square Garden. He was a big fixture at Madison Square Garden, and over 100 title bouts at Madison Square Garden for ring announcing. And also, he did quite a bit of wrestling events too at Madison Square Garden. He was the fixture for Madison Square Garden. If he did boxing, he did wrestling back in those days. He was still with a smoky haze and a glare of the ring lights. He had a tuxedo, and his shoes were polished to mirror shine, and he had a very booming voice. And in this corner, a very booming voice, a very overwhelming presence about him. He passed away at the age of 69 in 1971 of a blood infection. And it was very sad. Yes, I was barely born yet, but from what reading about him, when you did Madison Square Garden, you did boxing and wrestling, and his fixture and his staple mark will be forever remembered. Howard Finkel took over in 1977. 1977, he took over. And that was Howard Finkel's first gig as a professional wrestling announcer, all the way up until the very end. Howard Finkel coined WrestleMania when Vince McMahon was kind of throwing things out, and Howard Finkel was responsible for giving us WrestleMania. In fact, that he came up with the idea from Beatlemania. Yes. So Beatlemania was running wild and rampant. I mean, the Beatles were as hot as you can be. And Howard Finkel said, let's go with WrestleMania, an honor to the Beatles. And that's how it took off. Howard Finkel was another presence in the ring. He's a Hall of Famer. He's the only ring announcer I know that's in the WWE Hall of Fame. And the way he would emphasize the performers, faces or heels. And in this corner to my right, parts unknown, weights unknown, the executioner. The emphasis, whether it was faces or heels. Howard Finkel had that effervescent feeling of drawing the fans in. And new World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champion, Hulk, that kind of thing. It didn't matter if it was faces or heels. Howard Finkel had the way of drawing the audience in. When I was growing up and going to Madison Square Garden, right at the intermission, they had a break. Howard Finkel would come out, and if you watched at home also on MSG Network, he would as well, because it would air on MSG Network when the Virgins of Cable came out. Howard Finkel would talk about the next month's card, because it would always be every month or every other month, but mostly every month. Howard Finkel would then run down at the intermission what the next month's card was. So a lot of times when you had Hogan and Savage battle, or Hogan would appear in the middle or before the intermission of the card to set up the next month's match. And if Hogan wasn't coming back next month, then he would be towards the end of the card. So that's how you know, like the real guys that were going to maybe be coming back, well, they would appear before the intermission, and guys that would not be back next month, they would not. They appear towards the end, like the return matches, the cage match, that was saved for the end, and Howard Finkel then would announce it, the crowd would go absolutely wild. Howard Finkel, a fixture of the Garden, pay-per-views, yes, he did the WrestleManias, sadly he's gone, but Howard Finkel, yes, would obviously be the one for a lot of our times as part of the ring announcers and the tribute of being part of one of the very special, gifted, talented ring announcers in the world of professional wrestling anywhere. Jimmy Lennon Sr. Yes, was a staple mark in ring announcing in boxing and throughout California on the West Coast. The way he would sing the Star Spangled Banner. Jimmy Lennon Sr. Yes, we all know about his son. His son obviously is doing boxing and done some wrestling, and Jimmy Lennon Jr. would coin "It's Showtime." Well, Jimmy Lennon Sr. was a very prominent fixture up until he passed away on April 20th, 1992 at the age of 79. But he was a very stickler for details. And when he would go in the ring and would call and do these matches for announcing, he was as close to a detail as the tuxedo and the dress that he wore. When he was dressed up, he was a stickler for details. That's the one thing about him, and his son is no different. And they call hundreds and thousands of matches throughout their career. Yes, he was known for wearing a tuxedo. So was Jimmy Lennon Jr. Both their father and son, Hall of Fame boxing announcers, both a part of the world of professional wrestling. And yes, his son is still carrying things on as well. Also, I want to bring up two other names. Joseph McHugh. Joseph McHugh was a long-time ring announcer for boxing and professional wrestling events in Pennsylvania. He also worked the WWF, World Wrestling Federation tapings from the 1960s until his retirement in '84. He had done nearly over 10,000 matches during his career. Over 10,000 matches. He had a long career up until he retired in 1984. And he worked other venues besides Madison Square Garden, the Spectrum. He did everybody from Jack Dempsey to Muhammad Ali to Bruno Sammartino to Hogan. Thousands and thousands of athletes. And, he opened hundreds of episodes of wrestling events worldwide. But he was a part of the Guard. He was a part of, I mean, everywhere. Joseph Mihu was one of those people that a presence in itself, yes, a very strong presence and an overwhelming presence and a very talented. I mean, you don't ring announce over 10,000 events by accident. You don't. You just don't do that. David Penzer, a professional wrestling ring announcer, he is currently working in Impact. Yes, he's currently in Impact. He was a part of when it was known as TNA. But people remember Dave Penzer from the WCW days. He was there from 1993 to 2001. And then, like I said, he joined TNA, which then became Impact. He is also a realtor, and he has also done several podcasts as well throughout his career. But a lot of us back in the day, if you don't follow Impact, you should. But he was definitely a major fixture as far as the WCW days from 1993 to 2001. Yes, he was there along with Michael Cappetta. Michael Cappetta, when he was released, he then took over, and then he also did, he was there with Michael Buffer. Michael Buffer, I'm going to wrap this up real quick. Michael Buffer, yes, he was more of the guest on the pay-per-views, the closing of the pay-per-views. He would do the main events in WCW after Michael had left, and it was him and Dave Penzer, and he would do the main events, the closing of the shows and the pay-per-views, and his catchphrase, "Let's get ready to rumble!" He would do that, for the thousands in attendance and the millions, and then the "Let's get ready to rumble." Each ring announcer had their own persona and their unique way of getting about. Some are past, some are still with us, some are still working. But each one had a very special attribute that makes them very unique. They're just as important part of a show as the referees, the performers, the timekeepers, the ring announcer, the commentators if you're watching at home. But you need someone to introduce the combatants and to get the crowd excited, ready for that bell to go off. And each one of these men and women, Lilian Garcia as well, had that special talent. And there are hundreds and thousands of ring announcers all over the world that are working, hoping to be a part of the grand stage of either the WWE or AEW or Impact, or even just to have a job, even on the indie scene, anywhere, and hoping to take that next step, to get noticed. And each one of these men and women did get noticed because they've had something in common with each other. They all had longevity. That's right, they had longevity. They worked for many, many years, several decades, each one of them, and provided a unique style to generate a reaction by the crowd in the audience that's watching live and the people at home. And each one of these men and women do deserve to be in the Hall of Fames. All Hall of Fames, whether they're past or still alive. Michael Cappetta, Lilian Garcia, Dave Penzer, Justin Roberts, so on and so forth. Howard Finkel is the only one in the Hall of Fame. But the rest of them, they all belong in the Hall of Fame. Jimmy Lennons, I know there's lots of Hall of Fames, but they all belong in the Wrestling Hall of Fames as well, because each one of them brought their boxing style to the wrestling world inside the squared circle and generated that reaction that got you ready to go for that match, no matter what it is, whether it was the first bout or the last bout. So at the 19-minute mark, this has been my tribute to ring announcers on Rough Cuts. As always, be safe, be well, and may all of your matches be a main event. See you next week.